Hi, my name is Dr. John Ripoli, a functional medicine practitioner in Jacksonville, Florida. I want to thank everybody for showing up here tonight for this special masterclass on how we can combat the number one killer plaguing our lives today, and of course, that's stress. In fact, stress is the contributing factor in all disease manifestations, from heart disease to cancer. This lecture is timely as we navigate 2020, the year of the pandemic. So let's not waste any time and jump right in. So, COVID represents a type of physical stress, emerging or evolving from another type of stress, namely our relationship with Mother Earth and Father Sky. See, viruses actually spring up all the time and all over the planet as a kind of course correction via genetic adaptation. Virulent strains or bad strains are fed by a confluence of factors such as poor soil, poor air quality, and disease promoting practices in the way we treat animals, specifically those we raise for human food consumption. So the question that is now up front and center is whether or not COVID represents more than just a physical stress. In other words, is COVID giving us an opportunity to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, who have we become and how exactly are we living our lives? COVID, in fact, may be a gift of sorts to help us sort through our chaotic and robotic lives, to give us maybe an opportunity to restructure our never ending to do lists, to look at our priorities, or to simply ask ourselves who and what is most important. So, I want to look at a world famous awareness or selective attention test from Daniel Simons to bring light on the impact of stress on our lives today. If you've taken this test before, try it again, as a new twist has been added. So let's begin and see how well you score.
The monkey business illusion. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half missed the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold. When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events.
So there are a couple ways to interpret this test. But first, we have to understand a little bit about how our brain works. According to neurolinguistic programming, we only see a very small fragment of reality. Our five senses take in and process about 2 to 4 billion bits of information per second. Mostly all of this is unconscious. Then our brain begins to filter the bits of information through something called deletions, distortions, and generalizations so we don't get overloaded. And the result is that we only take in consciously about maybe 10 to 100 bits of information. With this in mind, we can look at all of our so-called problems, right, as the team in white. and all the joy in our life, our priorities, our values as the dancing ape. In other words, what you focus on is your reality. If you want to know what you're really valuing, simply make a list of your daily activities, your mind chatter, your bank statements, or what you spend your money on a daily or weekly basis. You might find it hard to believe that we really are so unaware. COVID allowed me to become more aware of where my attention has been being placed, or rather, where it has been displaced. Thus, our first lesson in combating stress is for you to figure out your values and your priorities. In fact, it is the most important decision I believe you will ever make. The next step is taking your values, or who and what is most important to you, and translating them into actionable behaviors or habits. The goal is to live in alignment with your values. Life is not about time management, but rather it's about priority management. So, what are values? Well, values reflect who you are at your core, or how you will show up in any situation no matter what. Your values need to be reviewed daily. Thus, when you make this one decision today, all other decisions are technically made for you. Without values, you'll never know when to say yes and when to say no. So here's your first homework assignment. Wake up every morning and write down your values and how you will show up in the day. This can be done also as a mental exercise, but you want to ask yourself, does my calendar or what I'm about to do today reflect my values? Or am I about to embark on another low priority day putting out other people's fires? If your calendar does not reflect your values, your daily actions most likely won't either. You can't say you've been distracted or busy if you have nothing to be distracted from. Meaning, if you didn't have a clear idea of what you wanted to do, you can't say that you're busy and you can't say that you're distracted. So that's my challenge to you, is first get really clear on who and what is most important to you. So next, I want to talk about the health equation, or what I refer to as the conveyor belt of life. See, the conveyor belt starts at birth, or age 0, and ends with our physical death. The conveyor belt represents our human potential, which science tells us is anywhere from 120 to 150 years. Thus, our physical body has the capacity to live well into our hundreds. What determines how fast or how slow we walk along this conveyor belt is called inputs. These inputs will either increase or decrease the speed at which we walk along the conveyor belt from birth to our physical death. So, what exactly are these inputs? Well, they're things like diet, of course, and our exercise and sleep hygiene and habits, choices that we make every day, and so much more. Thus, if we're eating healthy, if we're exercising regularly, we're nurturing our relationships, the conveyor belt slows down. In this scenario, we could have someone who is, say, 60 years old chronologically. However, biologically, they're age 40. So, chronological age is simply the number we tell somebody when they ask us how old we are. And our biological age represents our true cellular age. And on the other hand, if we ate the standard American diet, lived a sedentary life, did not have any meaningful connections and relationships, the conveyor belt speeds up and our biological age is compromised. So the goal is to enjoy increased longevity, which is number of years here on planet Earth, while simultaneously preserving our aging, or what is called our quality of life. So our health equation starts with inputs, and that in turn equals our biological age, our outcomes, or the body's overall stress response. So the various inputs, diet, lifestyle, directly affect the speed of the conveyor belt, which of course is our biological age. It's not cause and effect, but rather it's causes or multiple inputs and effects that determine this biological age. But I have to admit, there is definitely something missing from this equation. So, we have all heard of stories like the man smoking a pack of cigarettes a day for 40 years and being diagnosed with lung cancer and dying at an early age. But I think the more interesting question is, why does someone at age 40 who has never smoked a day in their life die of metastatic lung cancer? And on the other side, someone who has smoked a pack a day for 40 years live vibrantly into their late 90s. Thus, there's something that is missing. I call this missing piece the Joe Tequila effect. And it's based on my observation of a small segment of patients coming in, maybe in their 70s and 80s, having what I would call a horrible diet, drinking too much alcohol, and engaging in other not so healthy lifestyle choices. Irregardless, they seem vibrant, they seem healthy, they seem happy. So, what's going on? So, going back to our equation, we have to make a slight change. See, our inputs are actually filtered or interpreted by our mind's meaning making apparatus, our perceptions. Before the body actually decides the outcome or the stress response, meaning you can either have, keeping it simple, eustress, which is a healthy stress response, or distress, an unhealthy stress response. It first goes through a filtering mechanism. So I've identified 5 factors making up this filtration system, and oftentimes overriding the deleterious messages from poor diet and lifestyle. So what are they? Well, the first one is what we can call the stress index, or how you would answer the following question. On a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being no stress and 10 being maximal stress, how would you grade your overall stress levels? So the answer to this question is 100% subjective. The mind doesn't really understand the difference between real and imagined stress. Thus, the answer has nothing to do with your external events or circumstances right now. Rather, it's about how you internally interpret things. Thus, a high stress index means you are suffering or resisting what is the present moment. The second is called what I call the happiness quotient. And the question here is more to do with fulfillment. It really should be called the fulfillment quotient, than a constant state or emotion of always feeling happy. So, again, how would you grade your fulfillment in life on a scale of 0 to 10? The third one has to do with victim or co creator consciousness. So we have lots of eyeglasses or lenses that we use to interpret the world, right? Some people, they look out on the world and they see it as a battleground, a fight every single day. Some people see it as a classroom. There's things to learn every day. Some see it as a playground. Some see it as an obstacle course. And a lot of people see it as that they are a constant victim of external events or circumstances. You see, where we put our power or our ability to take responsibility for co-creating a life by design is really a key on how our body will respond to overall stress. It is, in essence, moving away from things being done to me mentality to being done by or through me mentality. The fourth is relationships. So, do you have meaningful relationships? This is not about the quantity, it's really about the quality. And of course, our most meaningful relationship is our relationship to ourselves. So, according to a study published in the American Journal of Public Health in November of 2013, the strength of our social isolation as a predictor of mortality is similar to that of well documented traditional risk factors such as smoking, obesity, and high blood pressure. All right, and the last one is the question, are you actually waking up every day? And are you moving towards or away from who and what is most important to you? This, of course, is the values that we've been talking about. The people who wake up every day and are moving towards or who and what is most important to them definitely have protection from the overall stressors in their life. So I want you to consider this obituary. So Nancy, a 56-year-old woman, beloved mother of 2, grandmother of 4, died in her sleep. She will always be remembered for her self-sacrifice to others, her family, and her church, always putting her needs before herself. Obituaries are really interesting because they give us a glimpse into why we are running on the conveyor belt of life. In fact, if you were to write your own obituary right now, it will truly give you a hint into what is causing you to sprint on the conveyor belt. Modern medicine is ultimately a biochemical model that focuses on strictly chemical and physical causes of disease, and they put little emphasis on valuable inputs such as stress, our job satisfaction, life satisfaction, how we're actually living our lives. If you consider the obituary of Nancy and how the role of self-sacrifice, and it's not just self-sacrifice, it's pathological self-sacrifice, is really playing a huge role in disease manifestation. So what roles are you playing in your life that potentially are causing you to sprint on the conveyor belt of life? So what's holding us back? To answer this question, I want to play a small video clip and then return to discuss.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. All of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't.
Try to see things my way.
Ouch. This video is hysterical. And behind its comedic artistry lies one of our greatest obstacles on the path to fulfillment. That's our lack of awareness, all the shadow elements, and living in what is referred to as the reptilian brain. So let's explain. The triune brain theory serves as a great metaphor for how we get trapped into self-betrayal, sickness, and overall disease. Evolutionary, our brains developed layer by layer, first the reptilian brain, then the addition of the paleo mammalian brain, and then finally the neocortex or new brain. The reptilian brain keeps us alive, it tells our heart to beat, it coordinates our breath, all without any conscious control. It keeps us safe, allowing us to react at lightning speeds to threats and harm. And on the opposite spectrum, it can't tell the difference between real and imagined threats, and thus reacts rather than responds to loved ones, circumstances, and events in less than heroic ways. The mammalian brain is where emotions reside. It's where we paint our daily experiences through our emotional vocabulary. It's the part of the brain that connects us with others, with nature. And on the opposite spectrum, it can connect us and fuse us with emotions, with our limiting beliefs, and so on. And finally, the neocortex. Can be thought of as the quote unquote left brain. It's our higher centers, critical thinking, problem solving. And the blocks here is that we can oftentimes get high tunnel vision, polarization, and an inability to integrate our right and left hemispheres. So in that video clip, anytime we are stuck in our reptilian brain, I want you to think about that video because we lose access to the mammalian brain as well as the neocortex. So we become reactive. We lose connection with others and our values. We get what sometimes is referred to as a frontal lobotomy, or what science calls cortical inhibition. We can't reason because we're stuck in the reptilian brain. We can't use the neocortex or the higher centers. And finally, our emotional intelligence goes out the roof, right? We are not looking at anger, we are anger. We are not looking at sadness, we are sadness, and so forth. So let's briefly look at some of the key players of stress before we begin to talk about antidotes and at-home treatments. So just to summarize, we have inputs, right? This is this various types of stressors which come into the body, and we have some sort of stress response that's elicited. We have the triune brain theory, which we previously discussed, whereby we can use or hyper-focus in on any one area. We can be in the reptilian brain state, the mammalian, or we can be in the neocortex. And of course, all of those will produce different varying results. The other big player that we haven't discussed is our hormonal system, and most notably our adrenals. So the adrenal glands sit on top of our kidney, and they pump out lots of different hormones, but the ones that we'll just kind of focus in on is cortisol, which is referred to as our stress hormone, and DHEA, which we will call our sex hormone because it's from DHEA, some of the other sex hormones are produced. So you can think of the body as having two primary communication systems: survival and healing. And although this is an oversimplification, it points to a system-wide truth. When you are in survival, you're not in healing. So this is just a simple matter of energy conversation, that you can't devote energies to both surviving and healing at the same time efficiently. They can be thought of as being mutually exclusive. So when the body is in survival, you produce corresponding chemical physiology. Your brain waves are altered, your stress hormones you get produced like cortisol, you have dysfunctional neurotransmitter production, your respiratory pattern is shortened, and you start to feel anxiety provoking sensations and feelings. With balance and healing, your body moves from surviving to thriving, and in turn produces the corresponding healing and coherent physiology. Brain waves are more relaxed, your hormones are more alignment with relaxing hormones like progesterone and oxytocin, neurotransmitters like GABA. You take deep belly breaths, and then, of course, you're having peaceful states that are calm and internal, and so forth. So, when you look at the adrenal glands and you look at cortisol and then you look at DHEA, you can think of it as one as survival and one as healing. So, if we are living the rat race of life and our cortisol levels are always elevated, then it's going to steal from sex hormone production. See, evolutionary, if you're running away from a saber-toothed tiger, you need cortisol, you need epinephrine, you need adrenaline, and you really don't need to be concentrating on having sex. So, how this manifests today? Well, the saber-toothed tiger is in our head, and thus we are staying in stress physiology at the expense of sex hormone production. So we have a global decrease in sex hormones, and we have a global increase in the stress hormones, which produce fatigue, libido issues, increased weight around the abdomen, sleep disturbances, and so on. So in this segment, I want to spend time looking at the antidotes. So we've talked about hormone influences, the triune brain, but now we want to get into the meat of what we should do. So we're going to be using the acronym PERMS, which stands for physical, emotional, relational, mental, and spiritual. And of course, we won't be able to touch on all of it, but I want to give you some things that you can do right here and now, tomorrow, so that you can start the process of decreasing your overall stress burden in your life. So we start with the physical. And there's just three areas we're going to focus our attention, three or four that we're going to focus our attention on. And the first one, of course, is diet. So the goal here is to eat lower on the food chain, plants, and to decrease or eliminate our reliance of those foods that are higher up on the food chain, such as processed foods and factory farmed animal products. When we eat lower on the food chain, we're eating less dense food. And in turn, our body becomes less dense. We're more open, we're more alive, we have better states of internal peace. And when we eat higher up on the food chain, it's both literally and metaphorically foods that are more dense. They're heavy. I mean, just think about the difference between eating a huge bowl of pasta, bread, and butter, and then chocolate cake for dessert, as compared to eating a salad, and how you would feel afterwards. I know personally, I want to go take a nap. So the density of the food is extremely important. So we're going to give a simple challenge, one that is time tested and one that could change the trajectory of your health and wellness. And the goal is to try and get 5 to 10 servings of vegetables into your diet every single day, and try to make sure that at least 5 of those 10 are green leafy vegetables. The second area to touch on is movement. Simply put, we gotta move, because if we don't move, we die. And we want to concentrate on aerobic activity, strength training, and flexibility. So make a commitment every day to do some movement. Third is our sleep hygiene practices. The sleep hygiene practices really create the circadian rhythm for our hormone release. So it's really, really important to start going to bed earlier, doing a digital sunset, getting rid of all electronics hours before bed, keeping dim lighting, and waking up at regular intervals. And this will have some pretty profound impact on your overall adrenal stress health. So the last area is really what we call our self-care practices. And in our office, anything that nourishes the mind, body, and soul is a self-care practice. So for one person, it's drinking a cup of coffee outside. For another person, it's riding on the bicycle. For another person, it's going to church and saying a prayer. Or another person, it's meditating or doing yoga. It doesn't matter what you choose, but you want to carve out time in your calendar for self-care practices. And the result of a self-care practice, whatever experience you engage in, should leave you feeling energized. It should leave you feeling peaceful. It should leave you feeling uplifted. All right, so I want to leave you with a simple and practical tool that I believe will cover the emotional, mental, relational, and spiritual dimensions. It's called the Miracle Method, and it was influenced and inspired by the definition of a miracle as found in the metaphysical text by A Course in Miracles. So, a miracle, as we will define it, is anytime you move from complacency to courage, from automation to a life by design, from surviving to thriving, from self-betrayal to a values-driven life. Anytime you digest, you metabolize an emotion in a nurturing way. When you move from an unhealthy habit to a healthy one. And when you speak and act from your highest, most heroic self. So as a metaphor, it's a shift in perception from fear, complacency, and surviving, and unhealthy habits to love, all the antidotes. Or from going from distress to eustress, which is the good stress response. In this context, we all start the day out as miracle workers, looking for opportunities to bring us out of the chaos and finding a way to go back into the calm or the eye of the storm where it's calm and where we're connected to who and what's most important to us. Life provides us many, many opportunities to cast out miracle-minded spells. So the goal is not perfection, it's progress. And to try and string one moment to the next, again and again and again. So before we describe the tool, just a quick reminder of the most salient aspects of the triune brain theory. So if you remember, the reptilian brain makes us react rather than respond. The mammalian brain keeps us disconnected from our true self, others, and who and what's most important to us. And the neocortex, our decision-making apparatus, allows us to act, speak, and behave in alignment with our heroic self. So, in a nutshell, the process goes something like this. Anytime you are stressed, anytime you're full of anxiety or fearful, you're going to, 1, contact the present moment. 2, connect with your highest self. And 3, embody miracle mindedness. So let's look at each aspect individually. All right, so let's look at each aspect individually. So to combat the reactive reptilian brain, we need to contact the present moment. That's it. So you can apply this by simply stopping, pausing, and telling yourself, stay present, I am okay, and I'm reacting right now. Next, psychologists tell us name to tame. In other words, when we notice or label what's happening, we automatically make that which was consuming us an object. Thus, we separate who we are from our reactions. Because ideally, we are not our reactions. For example, I am experiencing anger rather than being consumed by the emotion of anger. Lastly, we need to move. Dr. Peter Levine, author of The Body Keeps the Score, discovered over 30 plus years ago that wild animals recover from trauma by shaking. They discharge the quote-unquote emotional currents. Practically, we can exercise, we can walk, we can shake, we can dance. No matter whatever you do, the goal is to simply move and to discharge rather than letting the emotions stay unmetabolized within the body. The second step is to connect with our highest self. Simply applied, you need to remind yourself of your values, your priorities, and who and what is most important to you. Ultimately, this process will lead you back to the decision maker in the mind, where you make your ego the servant to your highest self rather than the other way around. Remember, the mammalian brain in the fear state has lost all connection, and most importantly, it has lost connection to our core identity or our core self. Lastly, we need to embody our highest self, or what we call miracle mindedness. So, to engage the higher centers, right, the neocortex and beyond, all we really have to do is ask some questions. So, some of my go-to questions or ideas are, how can I, in this moment, move from fear to love? What would be a more efficient, peaceful, and loving response? I can remind myself I can choose again. I have the availability to choose peace in this moment. How would my best self respond? We can remind ourselves of the serenity prayer. Concentrate on the things that we can control and surrender to those that we can't. We can use polarity thinking, which encompasses a both and rather than either or type of thinking. For example, polarization uses either or right wrong thinking, leading to destructive and oftentimes unhelpful solutions. On the other hand, polarity thinking asks us to integrate life, which is polarities, up and down, black and white. And it uses both and thinking. So a couple examples. Polarizing thought process would be selfish versus taking care of others. Polarizing, we can switch it from polarizing to polarity thinking by saying something like this to ourselves. No, it's not about being selfish. It's about taking care of myself and taking care of others. Another example, a lot of times people say, I'm stagnant, I'm stuck. And there's like these two opposites, right? Versus. So I'm stagnant and stuck versus growth. This becomes, in polarity thinking, appreciation and gratitude for where you are and growth. And lastly, sometimes embodiment may not mean you have to do something. Sometimes an action will be necessary, and sometimes just a state of being or no action will be your highest response. So, in summary, we live right now stressed out. A lot of this stress is located in one area, and that's inside our head. When we're feeling stressed and anxious, the first thing to do is to find a way to contact the present moment. And the easiest way to do that is to just stop, pause, and notice and name what's around you or what's happening inside you. Number two, remind yourself of who and what's most important to you. And number three, embody that by asking empowering questions. I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight. My hope in this mini presentation was really simple. I just wanted it to take you one step closer to finding peace in your heart and in your lives. With that said, good night, and until next time, talk to you soon.